Fresh meat.
Ah, space. The final frontier, the great unknown. Also known as the place where horror franchises go to die. But if there was ever a series that took it in stride, it's Critters. See, Critters is a series that started in 1986 with the fantastic Chiodo brothers. It's all fun and practical effects. And Dee Wallace. The latest entry came in 2019. The less said about that train wreck, the better. I mean, weed is legal in 18 states, and this is what we got? What the fuck? Then there's the web series, Critters: A New Binge, which attempts to reboot the series, and fails miserably. Yes, in the same year that a different entry came out. I'm telling you, this series is just all over the place. The 80s and 90s have proven that if you're gonna go bad with style. The franchise even started with getting 2 thumbs up from Siskel and Ebert of all people, which isn't exactly an easy feat for this type of movie.
Boy, I wish this trend would really end.
The quality steadily declined with each sequel, that by the time we get to the 4th, we're firmly planted in so bad it's good territory. So join us as we figure out just why Critters 4 is awfully good. It's bad. I mean, it is downright terrible at parts. But so much of that bad just turns itself into good based solely upon effort. It does take a while to get going, but it's also a boatload of fun for those in the right frame of mind. So where does this 4th entry in the series go? To space, of course. Much like Leprechaun and Pinhead, space could only make the film better, right? Right? Well... Thanks for watching Awfully Good, and ask that if you enjoy our shows, please subscribe to our channel right now, like this video, and click on the bell so you can be notified each time a new video goes up. And now, back to the show. Now, what are the Critters films about? Well, they're a series of horror and sci-fi comedies working around these furry ball-shaped aliens. They may look cute, but once they smile, it's clear they're like rabid fucking piranha. I mean, sure, they look like a Furby, but they'll gobble you right up because man, are they hungry. They also reproduce so fast, you practically can't stop them once they get going. We've got a group of space bounty hunters. No, they are not quite as cool as Boba, but they tend to hunt down these little critters so they don't spread throughout the galaxy. The first few films introduced us to Ugg and Charlie. See, Charlie's a nobody on Earth and isn't the sharpest tool in the shed. But Ugg recognizes Charlie's potential and takes him on as an almost bounty hunter apprentice. Aww. In this specific entry, the story picks up right where part 3 left off, with Charlie doing his bounty hunter job and hunting the last few of the little creatures that remain on Earth. As he's about to destroy the last of the eggs, he finds a bit of tech that soon puts up a very Princess Leia style message from his boss, Ugg. Yes, Charlie is our only hope. Well, shit. Since destroying the eggs will wipe out the species, he's ordered not to hurt them and instead send them out into space. Since Ugg is Charlie's hero, he listens to him, but unfortunately gets caught in the ship, which blasts off into space. Cut to this spaceship, where the crew is introduced one by one. Horror fans will be happy to see Chucky himself, Brad Dourif, as Albert. Yes, you heard that right. Not Albert, Albert. I guess that's futuristic or something. Then there's Angela Bassett as Fran, who genuinely gives a great performance. It's really weird to see someone who's so competent be in such an incompetent film. But I mean, he's horror royalty and she's a literal queen of acting. So this can only bode well, right? Right?
Hey.
Well, yes and no. They both are top highlights in this film, but unfortunately, they really aren't featured enough. Oh, and Twin Peaks fans may recognize this Eric DeRay in a brief but memorable role. From there, we get to see a lot of arguing amongst the crew. We also get to see what a creep the captain is when he spies on Fran. And what I love is that she pulls him towards her, making him think his creeping was actually wanted. only to end up decking him in the face. It's a great misdirect. Eventually, the ship comes across this spinning pod and pulls it into their ship. This is when Ugg makes another appearance and offers them a crap ton of money for the cargo if they bring it to a nearby space station. The only demands are that they can't open the pod. Seems simple enough, especially since they clearly need the money. Well, then you clearly also don't know Captain Rick, because he's an egomaniacal dumbass and he thinks they're being taken advantage of. So he takes it upon himself to force open the pod, because you know, that can't go wrong. This is when we find out that Charlie is in fact still alive. I guess that pod also suspended him in time because he has not aged a day. It's now 2045 and Charlie's taking it surprisingly well.
I'm in space, aren't I?
The best part is Captain Rick finally gets what's coming to him and the little critters get released on the ship. I don't know why, but this reminds me of Greta overeating in Nightmare on Elm Street 5. Equally gross. But from here on out, the critters are finally out and wreaking havoc. Thank God. Just when things seem like they're all solved and taken care of, the Space Council shows up, headed by Counselor Tetra. Hey, wait a minute, that's Ugg. This is where things get very confusing, or well, more confusing, because they decided to randomly make Ugg a bad guy and change his name. Now, for those that haven't seen the other films, this is just an absurdly stupid decision. Ugg's friendship with Charlie is one of the highlights of the series and leaves things on a pretty low note. The rest of the film goes how you would expect it. Actually, wait, no, it really doesn't. Because I would expect the critters a bunch, but they're hardly involved here. The Kyoto brothers claim this is because of script changes which put the smaller critters more at the forefront, but there was one problem. They didn't have the budget for smaller critters. So what follows is a weird mishmash of footage. This is easily the least we see of our title characters in any of the movies, and their presence is sorely missed. Now, you've been used to these videos at this point, and you're expecting it, so pour 'em if you got 'em. We're diving into the awfully good drinking games. First up is the Bloody Sunday. Take a nice glass of wine, perhaps a red to match the blood on the screen, and take a sip every time we get to see a little critter, as in actually see them, not hearing them, no, just a little bit of them. I mean, you need to see that full smile of doom here. This is definitely the lightweight. Beer battered. Better played with beer to avoid alcohol poisoning. Select a beer and drink whenever there's a static shot of a corridor. Because while this may be set in space, you could have said it's in a corridor making factory on Earth and it'd be just as believable. There are a lot of corridors here, so pace yourself. And finally, we have, don't drink that. Take a drink of that fun mixed drink each time a negative command is used to make the computer do what they want.
I repeat, do not give me security clearance to all levels.
You have security clearance on all levels.
Careful here, one section of the film may be very dangerous. If you want, you can pair these drinks with some foods to make it a full party. Meatballs, cheesy puffs, anything round to represent the critters, though I'd recommend avoiding the hair. At least now the tables are turned and they aren't eating you. Add in any red foods to represent the blood. Unfortunately, no space food gets any representation here, but it couldn't hurt to throw in a little blue milk for the proceedings. Following a good meal, some booze, and perhaps some coconut rolled donut holes as a furry dessert, a nice game of trivia can be had with these fun little tidbits. We get the highest body count of the series with 7 deaths here. It's still a PG-13 movie, but it does make for some fun moments. The critters are not the only space creature on board the ship. Most of the pills in the pharmacy scene is actually candy. This is the first time actor Don Keith Opper is top billed on a Critters movie. He's been in every one of these films and finally gets his due. Pour one out for Charlie. Co-written by the same man behind the script for The Crow, Leatherface Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, Critters 3, and The Hills Run Red, David J. Shaw. Filming took place at the same time as Critters 3. As soon as sets were wrapped for 3, they were torn down and made into a spaceship for 4, which is why they used sets and even some footage from other films such as Android, and Critters 2. Anne Ramsey appears in a bit role as Dr. McCormick. What is with this movie having such good actors? Star Wars references. Between UGG's guards being openly referred to as stormtroopers, or UGG's holographic message being very Princess Leia-like, then there's the trash compactor scene, which is just hilariously ripping off the same scene in A New Hope. The voice of the computer, Angela, is actually Martine Beswick, who was a Bond girl in both From Russia with Love and Thunderball. The embryonic critters were actually completed with a last-minute reshoot. The trailer for the film spoils the entire movie, so if you're trying to convince someone to watch this, avoid the trailer like the plague. Or if you don't want to deal with this movie, just watch the trailer. You'll practically feel like you've seen it. Judgment Time. Is Critters 4 a movie that I'd recommend? Well, I mean, yes and no. The film is surprisingly competent with its production, providing some really cool shots and even some underlighting. They clearly took a lot of inspiration from Alien. I mean, just look at those hanging chains. And I mean, that's not even getting into the poster.
Exactly like my ex-wife. Anything I say, she does the opposite.
Dourif is a delight while Bassett is an absolute badass. But this movie is boring as fuck. I mean, how do you spend so much time without the critters? It's like they just wanted to make a Canadian space show. This should have been a movie where the critters are taking over the space station and the crew members are just trying to get to the escape pod. It's not that complicated. But I'm not going to pretend like the production did some amazing job here. The film is overall more of a miss than a win, but it also does what so many other series do when they run out of ideas. It went to space. But has there ever been a series more suited for space than Critters? I mean, the first movie starts out with some alien council sending off a group of bounty hunters to kill escaped aliens. I'd say space is already pretty well in its DNA, unlike some other horror franchises. Now, is this movie fun? It definitely can be, but the film's main enemy is its pacing. It just plods along to the point where I'm just yelling at my TV for fucking anything to happen. But it also comes from first-time director Rupert Harvey, who hasn't done anything since. So, I mean, I think he got his punishment. The trade-off is that we get a film that looks a little more stylish than films in the past, but it sacrifices some of the silliness because the director was trying to make a different film. In terms of being the fourth in a series, there are always going to be issues. There's a lot that's already been done in this franchise, and it doesn't exactly have a complex plot to begin with. So the fact that they've made even more of them since shows that the creators are not exactly running out of ideas. Or it says they're not running out of money. I'm not really sure which. Now, should everyone watch this film? Of course not, it's terrible. But if you're a fan of the series, then it brings some finality to the proceedings. But even if you've never seen a Critters movie, there's still plenty in here for the so bad it's good crowd. The cheapness of the sets and the complete ineptitude of some of the crew provide for some good chuckles. But be warned, the pacing leaves a lot to be desired. It takes forever to get going, and the title creatures don't even show up until 35 minutes into the movie. What the hell even is that? So by that point, there may be a few audience members left awake, but that's why adult beverages are definitely recommended here. Because once you make it through some of the slower parts, you're treated to things like the critters causing havoc, and Brad Dourif being charming, a brand new and pretty gross critter. And did we mention that Angela Bassett showers? Because Captain Rick is definitely aware. Fucking creep. This film is probably better watched with friends and drinks, following our drinking games, and making up your own. It's a film that doesn't take itself too seriously, and thank goodness, because it's not great, but it's fun. Watching with friends can also be turned into a Mystery Science Theater 3000 kind of evening, commenting and adding your own jokes as the film goes along. I mean, how else are you going to fill time in those damn corridors? So I've been skirting around it, but the big question remains. What makes this an awfully good film? There are plenty of things to point to, but suspect number one is the pure cheese factor going on here. I love how everyone is just wearing clothes from the 90s despite the fact that it's supposed to be 2045. And sure, the script isn't exactly going to win an Academy Award, but damn it, the dialogue actually feels more real than most of the trite we get in movies of this ilk.
Let me tell you something. There'll come a time when those chances run out.
It has a cast that takes the situation seriously, which lends to the entertainment. If they'd been winking at the camera, it wouldn't have been as fun. It's this competency in the face of an absolutely minuscule budget that makes the film a marvel to watch. It's the fourth entry in a series that was already well established in the Awfully Good world, so of course it feels right at home now that space is the main setting. Critters just provide that special blend of horror, sci-fi, comedy, and also a helping of pure nonsense. These films are all fun and could almost be compared to the Tremors series. They certainly lend themselves to a fun evening of drinking games and poking fun at. The acting is decent in most parts here, and the story's not half bad. I mean, so long as you either ignore this version of Ugg or imagine he's completely unrelated to the Ugg from the other films. The execution leaves a bit to be desired, but that's where so much of the fun derives from. Somewhere between this awkwardly spinning pod out in space and the ridiculously colorful lights serving as navigation consoles, this film knows what it is and knows to have fun with it. And so should the audience. It's a passable film, so on a scale from Victor Salva to Roger Corman, I'd give an Awfully Good rating of 6 out of 10. What films do you think are awfully good? Comment below and we'll see you in the next video.
Those, man-eating hairballs that you do not believe in.
Yeah, what about them?
Well, I am reading 2 life forms on your level